All the stars are free. We're aboard the ferry boat Vallejo, which is tied up at the north end of Sausalito, close to San Francisco. And this is where I live. And you may think this place is rather weird. But that's because I've always loved weird things. I remember when I was a little boy, people used to say to me, "Alan, you're so weird. Why can't you be like other people?" Well, I thought that was just plain dull, like having the same thing for dinner every day. And as is well said, variety is the spice of life. And when I think over the weirdest of all things I can think of, you know what it is? Nothing.
Tagung, the great emptiness.
The whole idea of nothing is something that has bugged people for centuries, especially in the West. Because we have a saying in Latin, ex nihilo nihil fit, which means that out of nothing comes nothing. You can't, in other words, get something out of nothing. And it's occurred to me that this is a fallacy of tremendous proportions that lies at the root of all our common sense, not only in the West, but in many parts of the East as well. And it comes up as a kind of terror of nothing, a put down on nothing, on everything to do with nothing, everything associated with nothing, such as sleep, passivity, rest. What has struck me is that nothing, the negative, the empty, is exceedingly powerful.
Nothing is more fertile than emptiness.
I would say, not ex nihilo nihil fit, out of nothing comes nothing, but I would say you can't have something without nothing. For how do we basically begin to think about the difference between something and nothing? I can say, there is a cigar in my right hand and there is no cigar in my left hand. And so we get the idea of is here and isn't or empty here. But behind that, of course, lies the far more obvious contrast of solid and space. Now, we tend to think of space as nothing. When we talk about the conquest of space, there's a little element, notice, of hostility in that phrase. But actually, we're talking about the conquest of distance. Space as such, that is to say, whatever it is that lies between the Earth and the Moon and the Earth and the Sun, is considered to be just nothing at all. But to suggest how very powerful and important this nothing at all is, let me point out to you that if you didn't have space, you couldn't have anything solid. To begin with, without space outside the solid, you wouldn't know where the solid's edges were. For example, you can see me on the camera because you see a background here and all around me, and that background shows up my outline.
It's, for example, difficult to see a hand unless there is a contrasting background. Were there no background to the hand itself would vanish. Nothing is more fertile than emptiness.
But you always have to have a background to see a figure. You just can't do without it. To have the whole idea of there being only space and nothing else at all is not only inconceivable but perfectly meaningless, because we always know what we mean by contrasts. We know what we mean by white in comparison with black. They must come into being together.
Because of the inseparability of these opposites, they always go together. This, as it were, hints at some kind of unity which underlies them.
You don't have first something and then nothing, or first nothing and then something.
This unity is called Tao.
Space and form, in that sense, go together as the fundamental things we're dealing with in this universe. That which is void is precisely form, and that which is form is precisely void. Now, it's amazing what doesn't exist in the real world. In the real world, there aren't any things, nor are there any events. That doesn't mean to say that the real world is a perfectly featureless blank. It means that it is a marvelous system of wiggles. You cannot have the ups without the downs. Now, the same thing is true of all life together. We shouldn't really contrast existence with non-existence. The unconscious is, so to say, the part of experience which is doing consciousness, just as the trough manifests the wave, the space manifests the solid, the background manifests the figure. So it's interconnected. And so the many, many patterns of interconnections lock it all together into a unity, which is, however, much too complicated for us to think about, except in very, very simple, crude ways. But I am part of all this. The great energies. And so all that side of life which you call unconscious, unknown, impenetrable, is unconscious and is unknown and is impenetrable because it's really you. Nothing is what brings something into focus. Nothing, and this nothingness, symbolized by the crystal, is your own eyeball, your own consciousness, and the clear space in which all the stars have freedom to be seen.